Hey guys, Kich here. Today I'm really excited to finally get to take a look at the Microtech MSI. Okay guys, so this is the Microtech MSI, or the Microtech Standard Issue. So from here on out, I'm just going to say MSI to keep it simple. This is an interesting knife. So whenever this knife was announced, it kind of blew everybody's mind because it's a manual folding Microtech made in the USA. They haven't done manuals in a long time, and they haven't done USA made manuals in a while either. And then it's a completely new knife. It introduces another really kind of cool feature, which is the Microtech Ram-Lok. So we'll get into that a little bit later. We're going to start with the blade. So it's got this really nice modified sheep's foot blade on here. Got kind of a choil back here. That's also where the Ram-Lok locks up to keep it closed. That's your detent. It's made out of M390 MK, which is Microtech's proprietary steel from Bowler. So it's a little bit better performing M390, so that's always nice too. It's got really good edge retention, really great corrosion resistance. It's going to be able to, cut all day. You'll be able to strop it back to life. It's going to be a little bit of a bear to sharpen, but in my experience, it hasn't been too bad. The finger choil up here also really lends itself to the ergonomics of this knife. If you look at the handle, it's kind of a straight back and then it slopes off. It's real simple. It just kind of fits in your hand great. So you can choke up, you can choke back, you can go way back here on the handle if you have to reach in and cut something. It is really, really comfortable. The handles are going to be polymer on this one, which means that this is going to be the more cost-efficient model. These come in at under $200, which for an American-made knife with a bar-style lock on it, that's pretty crazy. I'm actually really excited to see these come in so cheap because I really want one. I know that the G10 ones go for over $300, and who knows what, once they start making custom ones, they're probably going to go for pretty crazy money too. So having an American-made folder with kind of like a new style lock on it, really good blade steel, at that price, that's pretty awesome. So back to the handle. It's got really nice texture on it. It's got the old school Microtech triangle raised texture on there. So it's really grippy. And it's not going anywhere in your hands. The ergonomics alone lock it in, but with that texture too, it's in all the right places. They kind of keep it away from the lock up here. So if I grab this and I slip back, I'm not tearing up my fingers, rubbing on the grip. Whenever they first came out, they kind of had a standard pocket clip that was held in with a screw, and it wasn't very deep carry. A lot of the knife stuck out. They've since switched to this really nice deep carry clip that is ultra deep carry. And that thing stands really deep into your pocket. It goes almost flush with the bottom of the knife here. So you'll have very little sticking out. Another really cool thing that they did that you don't see very often from Microtech is it's all Torx hardware. So this thing doesn't use proprietary hardware. That's really awesome, especially coming from Microtech. They're always proprietary typically, and it's really cool to see them just go to Torx. I can adjust this pivot. I can get it dialed in the way I want to. Sometimes with these knives, up here on the stop pin, you can kind of adjust that screw, get a little bit more fluid action out of it. So it's neat that it's kind of got some built-in adjustability that you don't typically get from Microtechs. Even some of their manual folders in the past have used proprietary hardware, so seeing it go to Torx, that's also just it's one of my favorite things about it. So now we can finally get into the Ram-Lok. This is an interesting lock for a couple reasons. If you look at it from the outside, it kind of looks just like your typical bar lock. But if you get in there and really kind of look, you can see it's almost like a Spyderco Mannix. It has a coil spring and a post. And then that goes back to the section here that is held by these two pieces of Torx hardware. And it's like one solid billet of steel. It's just one solid block. It's all built in. When you go to take it apart, you don't have to deal with any kind of Omega springs or anything. And then since it's a block, it kind of locks in like a back lock. There's a little ridge here. There's a little ridge on the underside of the lock. So when they meet up, they kind of click together. That's pretty neat. That makes for a really strong lock. And it also kind of adds a little bit of, I don't want to call it stick, but there's some kind of a little bit of tension there whenever you disengage it. And it makes it a little bit easier to close. It kind of just snaps shut. So it kind of pops off there. I don't know. Of all the crossbar style locks that I've played with, this one is probably my favorite because there's no side to side play. One side won't move farther than the other. You can actually close it with one finger a lot easier than most bar style locks because there's not two Omega springs. One's getting more tension. A lot of guys with crossbar locks like that, they tend to close them with both fingers. If you get a guy who closes it with one hand, it's eventually going to wear out one Omega spring before the other, and then that's when we run into problems with them breaking, snapping, stuff like that, popping off the frame. That kind of stuff can be a hassle. You don't have to worry about that with the Ram-Lok because you just have one coil spring. And then that should make taking it apart and putting it back together for cleaning much more simple than Omega springs too. I've ran into some trouble doing that with a few knives, and I wish that they had this kind of lock on them. Okay, we're going to do a quick size comparison for the MSI. So, a knife a lot of people are familiar with is the Benchmade Super Freak. So looking at them side by side, very similar in size. The MSI is going to be overall longer, but your grip area and your handle is going to be very similar. It's just a little bit longer on the MSI because it kind of butts out at the back here a little bit. But if you have them in your hand, they're going to fill about the same amount of it. The MSI does get a choil up here, so that adds some blade length. Cutting edge is going to be pretty similar, but it does have the ability to kind of be choked up on, and then that gives it kind of the feeling of just having a bigger handle too, because you can kind of get up into the blade a little bit. Can't do that on the Super Freak, but other than that, super similar in size. If you carry a Super Freak, it's going to be pretty easy to kind of slip this into your pocket, especially since it comes with a deep carry clip already. The other noticeable difference is going to be the lock. So the Ram-Lok has a lot more surface area to grab onto. If you grab onto the Axis lock, it's kind of small. I guess if you kind of had, bigger fingers, it might be a little bit harder to get a hold of. To where with the Ram-Lok, it's stepped and it's a lot more surface area. So you can either get back here on this X if you want to, you can kind of get forward of that and it just drops shut. So really easy. Also, as I mentioned before with the Ram-Lok, since it doesn't use Omega springs, you can use one side of it just fine and not worry about wearing out that coil spring. If you do that with an Omega spring, it might get weak, might break. Ram-Lok doesn't have that problem, so it's a pretty neat little feature. Alright, so I know that there was a lot to go over with this knife. It's a brand new knife. This is really like my second time getting to handle one. I really like it. I think that this is an awesome knife. To have an American-made knife come in at that price point, it's really cool. I think that having a great option for kind of everyday hard-use carry, and that's kind of what this thing is meant to be. The standard issue part is meant, it's kind of geared towards tactical carry. Any kind of general use cutting you have to do. It's got a beefy stop pin on there. It's got kind of a beefy burly lock. It's got no play. It's meant to just kind of wail on. And I think that the polymer handles don't really take away from that. Being polymer, we're going to see a bunch of different handle colors coming out in this thing, I'm sure. They've already done some tan. They've done some green. I can't wait to see some blue, some red, stuff like that. Microtech always does kind of crazy stuff with the colors. And then blade shapes. I'm sure that we'll see different blade shapes, different blade finishes. This one is apocalyptic. We have a stonewash one in stock as well. I'm sure that we're going to see all kinds of crazy stuff with that too. I'm sure there's going to be some bronze, some battle worn stuff, all kinds of stuff. Microtech always kills it with that. So let me know what you guys think about this knife. Obviously, I'm kind of a fan of it. Hit the comments down below. Let me know what you think of the Ram-Lok compared to other crossbar style locks, and then check the links. If you guys want to check this knife out, links down below. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Catch you guys next week.